Hello friend, welcome back. In our previous video, we successfully update our artist, right? So now we can update your first name, that means the artist first name, artist last name, and the installment. And when it will be updated, like here, if you want to update, it should be redirected to our edit artist page with a specific ID. So now I want to update our this album. So friend, if you already know about this concept, it should be just like that same. Right, so here I want to define one of the button, rather than you can also define that one of the link in our this album name area. So here I want to put some of the links. So here if you put this link, automatically it should be directed to our another edit page, that means the album edit page. So for doing this, I want to create one of the HTML page. So right now in our template area, that is our first tab, right? So into the first tab, I want to create one of the new file, and I just name this file as the edit album. Okay, I just name it as the edit_album.html. Now I just simply save it. So it should be just like our edit artist. Better I just simply copy everything from here. I just simply copy everything because here it should be just like that same. Right now we don't need this. I just simply remove it, and now in our edit album I just simply paste it. So friend, here I think you already know about it. I extended our base HTML, and that is actually our blog. Into the blog area, first of all, there is a S3. So now I want to change it. It should be as a edit album. So I just name it as the edit album page, and here there also we need some of the form. So into the form, that is our CSRF, and that is our edit form. So we have to also update it. So there is our submit button, there is a name, value is updated, and that is actually the class. So now I want to put some of the link in our this position. So that is in our edit artist area. So if you go to our edit artist, that means here that is our album list, and that is our edit artist. So that is actually not the edit artist page. So that is our, if you go home, the Kazarian, so that is our actually album list. Okay, like that is actually the album list, right? So here you can see that is actually the album list. So here we have to define some of the link in particular that area. So if you want to define that link, so that is our album and the name. So here I define one of the ahref. I define one of the ahref, and into the href area I just simply put it. I put our this album name. Click as a save all, and now refresh it. Yeah, now you can see it's now getting that link. So now we have to create one of the function for this one, because here we have to load some more page. I have already created one of the page as a edit album, right? So here we have to defining it in our view. Into the view, I want to create another function. So here I want to define another function. Function will be as a div, and I want to create another function as edit_album. Okay, I just name it as edit album. And also here you have to pass that request, right? So we have to pass that request, and after that I want to define the diction. And into the diction, first of all I want to make the things as empty, and then also we have to return our render page. So into the render, just like that same, I have to pass our request, and then also we have to load our page. So our page as a fast, right? Fast app. Into the fast app, I have already created one of the page. So that is our page as a edit album. So I just name it as edit_album. Okay, and then also we have to pass the context. So that is our context, and here I pass our diction. So I just simply pass that diction. So that's, we did this type of work a lot of the time. So that is the same concept, right? So for our edit artist, we did the same thing. So right now I want to do the same things in particular that area. So now we have to create one of the URL for this one, because here I want to access our this edit album. So if you want to create that URL, go to that URL, that means in our first application, and that is our URL. So now better I just copy it. And also here we have to update it with a specific ID. So I will do that things later. Right now, first of all, I want to check it. So I just name it as a edit album. Okay, I just name it as a edit album. And then I have already created one of the view. Into the view area, I have created our function name as edit album. So I just simply define as edit album, and I just name it as edit album. So now I want to load our page. So if you want to load this page, so that is our album list. So into the album list, that is our album list, and here I want to define our URL. So I think you already know about it. So here we have to define that URL, and into the URL area we have to pass our first app, that means our app name. So our app name I have defined as a fast app, maybe fast app. So I just simply copy it, and now in our album list here I have to define that our fast app, right? And then our into the URL I define this path name as edit album. So I just simply copy it, and now here after this I just simply paste it, right? So then it should be define our URL. So that is the first app and the edit album. So now if you click as a save all, and now if you go here, refresh this page, click as a check. So now it's showing as a template and fast app edit album. So the template does not exist. So maybe I did something wrong. So that is our edit album. In our URL I have defined that name as edit album. Our URL, that is our view. Into the view I have defined this function as edit album, and into this position I render our request fast app edit album. You can see I didn't define that our .html, so it should be as a .html, right friend? So because of all here you can see our file name as a edit underscore album.html. So I missed that HTML. So now click as a save all again, and now I just refresh it. Yeah, you can see it's now perfectly loaded our edit album. So if you go here, click as a test, yeah, that is a edit album. So in particular that position, what exactly we have to do? We have to do the same things, because of all for every album they have also one of the ID. Like if you go to our database, and if you go to our database album table, into the album table also they have the ID, right? So now we have to get a specific our this ID data. So we have to do the same things that we did for our musician, right? So here we have to get our this table, that means the app album table with this field, that is our ID field. So if you want to do that work, we have to go to our album list. Into the album list area I have already defined URL as a fast app, and then the edit album. And after this here also we have to pass that ID. So if you want to pass that ID, like here I name it as a album ID. I just name it one of the ID as a album ID. So friend, here it doesn't mean that you have to use that album ID. Whatever the things you will put on here, you can also define that only that ID. So right now for better understanding, I am just defining as a album ID, and into the album ID here, what exactly we have to define? We have to define in our this table, this field name as a ID field name. So I have already defined our for each loop. Into the for each loop, I have already get all the data with our album list, and into this album list, I define that things with the album. Right? So for the with this album, I have defined that name, that means our database field name. I have defined that another database field name as a release date. Now you can see that is actually the name and the release date. Now I also want to access our ID. So if you want to access it, then you have to define that things with the same thing with the album. So here I define with the album. So with this album, I want to access our database field name as an ID. Okay friends, so now we have to also define this ID in our URL. So now go to our URL, because here also we have to edit it, a specific one of the ID that we did for our artist. So it should be just like same. I just simply copy it, I just simply paste it. So now here it should be as a, here I define that name as a album ID. So now I just simply copy that album ID, and in our URL I just simply define that ID name will be as a album ID. So now also we have to add this album ID in our request. That means in our view, into the view previously I have passed our requested ID name as a artist ID. So now we have to do the same things for our edit album. So now here I just simply pass it our ID name will be as a album ID. And also now we have to do the same things. Better I just copy it, because here we have to get our specific ID, all that data, and also we have to define that things. We have to defining it in our album form area. Better I just copy and then customize it. So after this I just simply paste it. So now first of all I want to take one of the variable. Here I take variable for the album info. So I just simply name it as a album and album info, and then our class name. So I have already defined the class in our model. If you go to that model, into the model, our field name, that means database field name as a album. So I just simply define that as an album. So with this album, I define our objects, get our primary key. So right now our primary key will be as an album ID. So I just simply define that as an album ID. And then with this form, that means forms, and here I have already defined this part. Here I defining it in our forms area. Into the form area, I have defined that class name will be as an album form. So I just simply copy, and now here it should be as an album form. Okay friends, so I have already discussed about that main concept. So now we actually updated it for our album. So I just simply define our album form in instance, and into this instance I want to define all that our get ID. So here I have already get all that our specific ID data and take the things with this variable as a album info. So here we have to pass it our album info. Right friend, so now I want to pass it. So I want to pass it in our dictionary area. So before I have already passed it as a edit form. So now I want to do the same things. I just simply pass our, I just take that thing with the same name as a edit form, and here we have to pass that form. So I just simply pass our form. Right friend, so now we have to pass that things in our form area. That means into the diction, I just pass that things with this context diction. So now we can access all the data in our edit album page. So I have already created our edit album, and into the edit album here, maybe I define as a Control Z because I have already defined one of the form. Okay, so into the form, that is our post method will be the same, and that is our edit form. So from to this position, I have also passed that name as a edit form. So right, so into the edit form, I just simply define as a as paragraph, and then I define as a CSRF token, and then I also define one of the submit button. I think you already know about it. That means here it should be loaded our form. That means in our models, I have already defined all that our field. So it should be loaded all that our field, right friend? So now here I define that our edit form. So now we have to update it. So if you want to update it, it should be concept will be just like that same. So that is our form. So after this, okay, after this, what exactly we did on here? We did some of the if condition. First of all, it should be check as a post method or not, and then our musician form, here we have to pass it, then valid, and then submit. So better I want to do the same things. I just simply copy it. So after this form here, I just simply paste it. Okay, so first of all, that is actually request will be the post or not. So in our edit album here, I have defined that method will be as a post. So for the reasons here, we don't need to do anything. So that is our post, and then forms, now our class name as a album. That means the album form. So I just simply define as the album form, request, post, instant, and into the instant here I have passed what? I have passed our existing data, and I just get all that existing data and take the things with this variable, right? So now I just simply pass our variable will be as the album info, and then if is valid, then it should be save all the data, it should be commit in our true, right? So here it should be save all the data in our database. So that's all you have to do. So that is actually pretty much same concept as I told you before. If you already know about that basic things, we did the same things for our edit artist. So now I just simply apply it for our edit album. So I think every line, it should be very much clear to you what exactly the things I did on here. So now let's check this out. I just click as a save all. Now and go to our page, and now go to home, Kazarian, and that is our jack, and the text, there is a 2 albums. So now I want to update that jack. Yes, now you can see friend, now it's perfectly getting our specific ID data. So that is our ID data. That is, you can see it's now by default setting as a Kazarian. It's now showing that name as a jack, and also release date is visible. And for this one, I have defined that number. That means that our number status I have defined as excellent. It's also selected as excellent. So now if you want to change it, like I just make the things as a Michael Jackson right now. So that means this name, that album name, I want to change it, and I want to change it our artist name Aryan to Michael Jackson. And if you also want to change that our release date, if you want to change it as a worst, and click as a update, yes, you can see it's now perfectly updated. But here I didn't define any redirected page. Like here you can see after that where exactly it should be redirected, I didn't define anything for the reasons it's now on the same page. But right now that is actually the jack. If you go to our home, and if you go to Michael Jackson, And into the Michael Jackson, here you can see Jack is now on here. That means it's successfully updated. Our release date is updated, and also I make the things as a host. So now you can see it's now updated. Like I just show you again. Go to here. I want to make the things as a right now as excellent again. Click as a update. Go to Michael Jackson page, and now you can see Jack and rating is updated as a 5. Okay friends, so we successfully updated it. So now here if you want to do this type of work, like when you update it, and then if you want to display some of the successful message, that means when it should be updated, it should be display some of the success message. How can do that work? So for doing this is pretty much easy. If you go to our view, into the view, that is our edit album, right? Into the edit album, first of all you have to define one of the diction, because here I want to define some of the empty diction. Into this dictionary I have already passed our form. So for the reasons here, after this I take one of the diction and I just first of all make the things as empty. Okay, and then also in our form area, that means in our when it should be valid, then it should be save this data, and after save this data I want to display some of the message. So if you want to display some of the message, then you have to define that things with the diction. And into the diction I just simply define as update. Okay, so here I just simply define as a update, and into the update function here I want to display some of the ID. So I just simply define ID name as a success text, success underscore text. And into the success text, which text you want to visible, you can define that things on here. I just name it as a successfully updated or album. Okay, album successfully updated. This type of one of the text I want to visible. And here also we have to pass our this success message, right? We have to pass it in our dictionary area. So if you want to pass it, then after that diction here you have to define our update. So here we don't need this. After this I want to pass it in particular that area. So in particular total things I want to define in our first bracket. Okay friend, so now our update message I want to pass it in with this edit form. So that is our edit form, and also I pass that diction in our page, that means our edit album page. So now we have to display our this text, that means the success text in our edit album. So now go to our edit album, and like here after this, okay, better after this I want to display our this message. So here we have to define first of all one of the condition. I just simply define one of the if condition, and also we have to AND it. So I just simply AND our if condition. So I just simply AND if. Perfect. So into the AND if condition, first of all here when he get appropriate this text, that means in particular that area we have defined our text name ID as a success text. So I just simply copy it, and now here if you get appropriate this success text, then it should be display some of the message, right? So then it should be display our this message. So for the reasons here I want to define one of the bootstrap class. I just take one of the dev class, and also in bootstrap that have also one of the class for view all that your success message, that actually one of the class as a alert. So I just simply define as alert, okay, alert success. So I just simply define as a alert success. So now in particular that position I want to display our this ID data. So that means here I have defined our ID as a success text, and into the success text I added our this text, that means album successfully updated. So I just simply copy it, and now I just simply display our this ID. Okay friend, so I think it should be very much clear to you. If you get any successful data, then it should be display our this message. So now let's check this out. If you now click as a save all, and now I just go home, go to that Kazarian, click as a test one. I want to change that name only, and also make the things as a excellent, click as a update. Yes, now you can see friend, now it's showing our this message as a album successfully updated. I hope you can well understand about it. So if you want to display this type of message, so here if they have any message, then it should be display our this condition. So into this condition I define one of the bootstrap class as a alert success. Into this alert success here I display our message. So that is the message I have defined in our view. So into the diction update I define our this text. So that is actually our text, and that is our text, right? So friend, I think it's very much clear to you how can edit your album, and also if you want to display this message, how can display it. So now friend, your task is to do the same thing. So right now for our this artist, that means the edit artist, here I didn't define any success message. So that is your task. I think you practice it and make that things like that way. When you update your artist, then also it should be show some of the message. Okay, so that is your practice work. So try to do this. So we successfully updated our album. So now we have to define that our another code application, that is actually the delete. So right now if you want to delete your all that artist name, how can delete it. Also if you want to delete your album name, so here if you go to the Michael Jackson, so they have also some of the album. So if you want to delete this album, how can do that work? In our next video I will show you that things with the live example. So thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.